So these are two very important things. Many of you know maybe part of the topic, but I suppose many of you are not very conversant with the specific steps that are needed to be followed by the researchers while conducting a research, but in the academic. What we have seen in academic research, people, particularly who are undergoing primary data-based survey work, primary data-based research, they usually concentrate their work on a particular area. Uh, at some point of time, they are doing it not by following the actual scientific methods that are needed to be followed. Here, my effort will be to acquaint you with the official procedures that you should follow while preparing your sample frame, and the steps you need to follow while uh, taking the first sample units or the ultimate stage sample units for your survey. So we would go to our presentation. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. It can be seen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first topic with which I would like to start today, the sample survey, some important steps to follow, and use of official statistics in planning. The second part, that is use of official statistics in planning, is a vast subject, and I suppose many of the people who studied economics or statistics in their graduation or post graduation, they have got a part in statistics, naming official statistics, and in most of the cases the students used to skip that part because they didn't like that part because it's not so interesting. But while you are into a research work, it is highly important that you know how the official statistics uh, is collected, how the data compilation is done, how the pre-data entry scrutiny is being done, data after data entry, how the tables are being generated. All these things you should know, and there's a specific hierarchy in official statistical administration. Many of you may know, many of you may not know. In every state there's a Directorate of Economics and Statistics, which takes care of the entire spectrum of collection, compilation, and dissemination of data. As in our state, there's a Bureau of Applied Economics and Statistics, which is the nodal agency for collection, compilation, and dissemination of data. That directorate is headed by one director, and his office is housed at Kolkata. And in every district, so far I'm talking of our state, in West Bengal, in every district there is a district statistics office, which is headed by one deputy director or one joint director, or in some cases some assistant directors are also there. To introduce myself is Hemanta Sarkar, deputy director, Bureau of Applied Economics and Statistics, and I'm heading Birbhum District Statistics Office currently. And this is the structure in almost all the states of the country. Here in our state, it is named as Bureau of Applied Economics and Statistics. In most of the states, they are called Directorate of Economics and Statistics. So all these statistical agencies that is there under, in some states they are under the cabinet ministries, in some states they are not, but they are independent state government departments who are taking care of collection and compilation, dissemination of statistical data. And in relation to surveys conducted related to different uh, issues regarding policy formulation and all. At the center, there's a nodal agency. You all know that there's a Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Is MOSPI, and under that umbrella, there are so many wings. There is Central Statistical Organization. There are National Statistical Office. There's a and there's a computer center. And National Sample Survey, it was previously known as National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO. Many of you know the organization in this name. It is NSSO. But presently it is named as NSO, that is National Statistical Office. And this is the largest sample survey organization in the world. As you can easily understand that India is the second largest populous country. And whenever we undertake sample surveys, we need to cover the whole of the union territory, whole of the country, covering all the states and union territories that way. So naturally, the sample size becomes very large, and the people who are working in this organization, the total human resource who are engaged in this organization are largest in the world. So this National Sample Survey Office has again different wings like Field Operations Division, Socioeconomic Survey Division, Data Processing Division, and there's a Computer Division. So that way, this is the structure at the center. So at the center, there is a MOSPI, that is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, that decides the policies, the issues that are needed to be addressed, and they receive requests from different administrative departments that on which subject the survey is to be conducted and all. And accordingly, they structure the schedules, and they involve the state governments, and the surveys are conducted, and tables are generated, reports are published, and that are used by the government for policy making. So this is one part. That is, there are certain surveys where Government of India involves all the state governments with them, and the state governments participate in those surveys on a matching sample basis. But apart from that, apart from these surveys which are being conducted on a joint venture basis, certain sample surveys and certain other exercises are there which are being taken care of exclusively by the state governments. So I will not go into the administrative structure and all the details because that will eat up the time. We have only 1.5 hours time for covering two topics. So I just give you a short idea on how the official statistical system works. So now let us start the steps to follow for conducting a sample survey, where to start and how to proceed. In many cases, as I told at the very beginning, that the academic researchers, that is who are undertaking MPhil or PhD, or they are into some other research activities, they generally take some samples in a very ad hoc manner by not following the proper scientific procedures. Many, some of them may follow, but as I have seen, I have interacted with a lot of academic people who are into research. They don't go for following the typical official procedure. It is not always possible also, but as far as practicable, we should follow the steps serially while we plan for a survey, and we need to conduct a sample survey. Okay. So first step we need to know is the objective of the survey. This is very preliminary. All of you know that when you are conducting a sample survey, you need to know what is the objective of the survey. As for example, in the 74th round of the National Sample Survey, there was a survey on services sector. Why the services sector survey was taken up? Because the services sector has the highest contribution in India's GDP, and if we see the structural transformation of Indian economy since the 1980s, the service sector is gaining importance very, very fast. So it was necessary for the government to know a lot of different information, lot of different parameters related to this the services sector, because except a very few industries which are registered under the Companies Act of 1948, Factories Act of 1948 or Companies Act of 1956, in most of the unorganized or unregistered service sector units, the government doesn't have any data. How many people are working, whether the establishments are engaging hired people for conducting their work, for carrying out their business, what is the turnover, what is the profit investment ratio, and so many other things that helps government in preparing a specific plan for the services sector. If the government wants to uplift the people who are engaged in services sector and who are mainly migrating particularly from agriculture, if we analyze the progress from 1951, the start of the plan period, gradually the share of GDP in agriculture has declined, and that has been eaten up by the services sector. So it is important to know that why services sector is growing so fast, why people are so addicted to this sector, and what is the behavioristic pattern, what is the outcome, how government can utilize this sector for further growth, or how the government can maintain a balance between the different constituent sectors of the Indian economy, like primary sector with agriculture, secondary sector with manufacturing, and the services sector. So objective of the survey has to be defined at the very outset. This is the first step. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Similarly, last round, I don't know whether you are familiar with the different rounds of national service. In the last round, we had conducted a survey on domestic tourism expenditure and multiple indicator survey. So that survey was conducted in the last year, and domestic tourism is gaining importance very quickly, and its share in GDP is also increasing, and it can act as a very good source of revenue for the government. We needed to know a lot of things from about the particular sector. And another thing, as regards multiple indicator survey, actually we were trying to know the sustainable development goals, the 20 goals that were set out in 2015. We wanted to achieve those goals by 2030. So related to that, how much we achieved in this 6-year period from 2015 when the goals were set. So we had a survey on this. So the objective was clearly specified. And so far you are concerned, where you are undertaking research for your PhD degree or MPhil degree, or even for a paper to be published in a referred journal or something, you are deciding the subject, you are picking up some subject, and you are starting to work on that. But what government does, government actually picks up the subject as with the policy requirements, like we did it in case for domestic tourism and for sustainable development goals. So that way objectives are defined. Next comes your subject coverage. Once the objective is defined, you have to decide about the subject coverage. That is, which part to be excluded, which part to be to include, all that. Like I was talking about the 74th round survey of NSO, where the services sector enterprises were being surveyed. There, in that particular round, government decided to exclude public sector enterprises and government enterprises that is owned by government. Enterprises owned by government were excluded from the ambit of the survey. Air transport, financial and insurance, etc. these were excluded. Whereas non-profit institutions, construction activity, and cooperative societies activities, all that were included. Now, construction activity was left out. Well, so this way, which units are to be excluded, which units are to be included, that has to be specified at the very outset. So suppose you are the current topic, we are living in a COVID age. You know, we are going through a COVID-19 pandemic. So there has been a lot of research on COVID, the impact of COVID-19 on the different parts of the economy. So if any of you are interested in, say, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on, say, the agricultural cultivators. So you have to decide about the subject coverage. Do you want to include all the cultivators, agricultural cultivators? Do you want to include all those people who are owning some land or possessing some land? You may think of excluding a part of agricultural cultivator who doesn't own any land. That might be your interest. You may be interested to know the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the agricultural cultivator who are owning land. Because you know, cultivators, by the definition of agricultural cultivator, we know that any person who is cultivating on a piece of land is a cultivator. That piece of land may be possessed by him through leasing. A cultivator can lease in land from others, but he is not the actual owner of the land. But in that case also, he can be a cultivator. But in your case, while studying the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on agricultural cultivator, you may like to exclude the group of cultivators who are not owning any land. It may so happen. So that has to be decided at the very second step. So first step is your objective, which is to be specified. Second is your subject coverage. And subject coverage has to be decided in a way that the important items are not excluded. And also the items which are not so necessary and avoidable, that are not included in the survey to make it a cumbersome one. Right? Did you get my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these two steps I discussed. Second, the third step is geographical coverage. You know, the individual researchers who are undertaking research for PhD degree or something, their ambit is very small. Has to be small, because for an individual researcher, it is not possible to cover many districts, many states, etc. So they have to confine themselves in a very small area, you know. But in that case also, he has to decide about the geographical coverage. Just I talked about the impact study of COVID-19 pandemic. Many of you may be interested in your state. Many of you may be interested about the impact study of COVID-19 pandemic in some progressive districts, in some regressive districts, and in some medium performed districts. Many of you may choose the geographical area to be, say, for West Bengal, we consider northern part of Bengal is little neglected as compared to the southern part. Well, so some may be interested in deciding about the geographical coverage, confining it to northern part of West Bengal. So that way, be it an individual researcher or be it a government agency, the geographical coverage has to be decided. In our case, who are engaged in official statistics thing, we are conducting surveys nationwide, covering all the states. In my case, I'm doing surveys in my state covering different districts, all the districts. Okay. So nationwide sample surveys, which are conducted by National Sample Survey Government of India, they conduct surveys across the entire country. And as for the last survey, last round, there is 78th round AC survey, and normally in most of the cases, in all rounds of National Sample Survey, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and certain hilly regions are generally excluded from the survey due to accessibility factor, because these areas are very difficult to access and these areas are generally excluded. Right. But you have to decide the geographical coverage, that on which part of the district or a state or say which part of the block or a village maybe you are willing to conduct your survey. Right? So that is your geographical coverage. That is the third step. So first step is objective to be specified. Second is your subject coverage. Third is your geographical coverage. Next important thing is reference period and work program. If reference period is not decided, you cannot proceed. You know, in normally, I was talking of NSS surveys. NSS surveys are conducted generally for 1 year. At times, it is conducted from July to June, 1st July to 30th June of the next year, or at times from 1st January to 31st December. In the last survey, there is last concluded survey, 78th round survey. It was a 1 year survey starting from January to December, and the work program was so decided that the entire round is divided into 4 different parts of 3 months, and those were defined as sub rounds. In your case as well, when you are doing an independent research, you know, you can think of such different reference period. For example, suppose you were studying the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on agricultural cultivators. I was actually, with a single example, I am trying to explain the different steps so that it becomes easier for you to cope up. You can think of COVID-19 pandemic started from tentatively from February, March 2020, and it is still there. So you can think of, many of you can think of your study. You may want to divide your study into 2 different periods. One period may be the peak period when the COVID-19 pandemic was in its peak, or the different stages, first stage, second stage, third stage of COVID-19 pandemic. Some may think of taking samples, say, I'm interested to cover 5 districts for my impact study of COVID-19 pandemic on agricultural cultivators in 5 districts. These 5 districts I will cover once in, say, stage 1, that is from June to September kind of period, and the same households will be covered, same villages will be covered by me for the SAID study when there were relaxation granted by the government in the second stage. So that will help you to understand that exactly the COVID factor, how the COVID factor is impacting. Because when the relaxations are being given, if the total income, net income, your cost of cultivation, and other parameters related to agriculture, if these are impacted, if there's a difference between the impact in the first stage and the second stage, that may be an interesting part of your study. So that way you can define your reference period and you can chalk out your work program accordingly. Right? As for the 78th round survey, which was there on domestic tourism and multiple individual survey, the survey could not be completed, as per the work program. It was to be completed by December 2020, but it couldn't be completed, mainly for the COVID-19 thing, and secondly for assembly elections in different states, where there was certain tension between the central government, since the survey was designed by the government of India. The states where the rival parties were there, they were not cooperating with the survey program. Until and unless all state governments get together and participate in the program, a program cannot be successful. So due to all such reasons, the survey program could not be completed in time, and it had to be extended up to last 15th August this year. And 79th round survey has not yet been designed. So this was our reference period. So objective, then subject coverage, then comes geographical coverage, and then come reference period and work program. Fine. Next important issue, the very important issue, is your designing of schedule. Designing of schedule will differ. That will depend on your objective, your coverage. So how the schedule will be designed will be dependent on what subject you have taken, on which area you are taking your conducting your work, which groups to be excluded, which to be included. All these things will have its reflection in the schedule that you are designing. And this questionnaire designing thing, has two parts. In most of the cases, we need to frame one questionnaire or one schedule for a sample frame. That is the first schedule that you have to design. And second schedule that you are designing, there may be more than one schedule depending on your subject. That comes next. But first part is your sample frame. What is sample frame? When you are conducting a sample survey, there's no mention that we are not covering the entire population. We are taking a representative part of the population, So if we are undertaking a survey which is covering the whole state of West Bengal or any other state, it is not possible for us to cover the entire state. So we have to concentrate on a part. And on that part as well, we don't have any data on the exhaustive set of households or enterprises or such and such, from which we can pick the households or enterprises to be finally selected for your survey. When you are studying your impact of COVID-19 on agricultural cultivator, so ultimately you have to visit the households of agricultural cultivators only, isn't it? So that you can have information from him that how COVID-19 has impacted that particular person. What was his income before COVID-19? What is his present income? How has that been impacted? And what are the different components? How he has been whether he has been indebted in the process or not. So you have to ultimately select the agricultural households. So what is the list of households? Which list you are referring to? Are you going to consult the entire list of households of West Bengal? No. So you need to have a sample frame from where you will select your ultimate stage units or the ultimate units, that is households, for your survey. Suppose we are an example I have given here. Suppose you are interested in conducting a survey on infrastructural facilities of all the government aided schools in West Bengal. So here you have a ready frame, you have a ready sampling frame, because Paschim Banga Sarva Shiksha Mission has a list of all schools which are aided by West Bengal government, or in other states as well, the schools data, the list of schools, infrastructural facilities. Many of you may know that there's a DICE. DICE is developed. There's a database on educational institutions covering all infrastructure, human infrastructure, physical infrastructure, amenities, etc. are done. So sampling frame in case of if your subject area is something like this, where there is a ready sample frame, then you don't need to design a questionnaire for a sample frame, for preparing a sample frame. Similarly, in case of government colleges also, or in other cases also where a ready data set is there at the disposal of the government or at the disposal of any other institution, you don't need to prepare a questionnaire for your sample frame. But that is actually not the case in all the cases. In 95% of the cases, like I was discussing, the impact of COVID-19, or say impact of demonetization on different classes of people, we don't have any ready frame. So we have to prepare a sample frame before conducting the survey. You get my point?
Yes, sir.
Any of you, if you have any query, then I would request you to stop me so that I can see you and address your issue that way. Okay.
Sir, how
Okay.
to prepare the frame in such cases where we don't know the
Yeah, please.
how to prepare the sample frame?
Yes, that will discuss. That I will discuss in the next slides. You will see.
Okay.
Right. So when there is no ready frame, then we need to go for a questionnaire which has to be designed for preparing our sample frame. And after that, after the sample frame is ready, we can prepare any number of questionnaires depending on our subject. You can design a schedule for indebtedness. You can design a schedule for income. You can design a schedule for any other thing. So there will be final questionnaires. There is final questionnaires, maybe many, but sample frame questionnaire will be one, which will give you the total list of households or enterprises from which you are actually picking up the households or the ultimate stage units for your survey, right? So next comes is your sampling design. Okay. Many of you have heard about multi-stage stratified random sampling kind of things. So actually, as we are talking, that what would be your formula for drawing the sample ultimate stage units? What will be your design to pick up the households to be visited? That has to be decided. That is your design. That design may be different. Suppose two academicians, two researchers are conducting research on a same subject, but their sampling design may vary. We cannot abruptly say that he or she is better and his design is better and his design or her design is worse. Depending on the circumstances, geographical coverage, subject coverage, objective, all these things I have already discussed, the design may vary. You may have some compulsion in preparing your sample design in such cases. So sample design is a very crucial part, in the entire sample survey process. Because ultimately, a sample survey should represent a population correctly. If we want to study the impact of a particular incident like demonetization or COVID-19 pandemic on, here I have given another example on the economies of rural artisans and craftsmen. You know, the group of people who have been mostly hit by this COVID-19 pandemic are the people who used to work at their home, the rural artisans, and people who are engaged in handicrafts, etc. They used to sell the products all by themselves by visiting in a hut. They are not being able to sell their products at huts. They were not able to. Now there are certain relaxations are there. So these people were very worstly hit, badly hit. So if we want to study the impact of COVID-19 on the rural artisans, say, and craftsmen, then we should prepare our sample design in a way that rural artisans and craftsmen of different categories. See, some establishments are registered, some are not registered. Some establishments are OAEs. OAEs means own account enterprises. That is, who doesn't have any hired worker. Some establishments are there who have hired worker. They are called establishments. So we have to design our sample in a way that all the registered, unregistered, and that way OAEs, establishments, and all different categories of establishments and households are covered in our sample, isn't it? So sampling design is very important, very crucial. As I told, that multi-stage stratified random sampling is the most popular and most widely used technique in case of sample drawing for any research study. In some cases, it is not required. Like we are attending a class. Now here, if we go for an impact study of this trade income workshop among the students, among you people, we don't need to go for any stratification or something like that, because all of you belong to a homogeneous group. All of you are qualified, postgraduates. You know the basics. So here we don't need to go for any stratification for my study. But where the group is not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous, like agricultural cultivators. Agricultural cultivators may be of different types. Some have 10 acres or more land. Some people have, you must know about the different categories of cultivators of farmers. There is marginal farmers, small farmers, semi-medium farmers, medium farmers, and large farmers. So depending on the land position, there may be categories of inundated, non-inundated. There may be categories where cultivators having any other second business, subsidiary occupation. So different kinds of stratifications we can think of. On seeing your objective, you have to decide that. Okay, there cannot be a thumb rule that these stages you have to follow, or these steps you have to follow. You are the best judge to decide that what is your ultimate objective, which groups you want to represent. That way you have to pick up your people or pick up your ultimate stage units, right? But normally, multi-stage stratified random sampling technique is the most popular and most widely used in our surveys, in official statistical surveys also. We are following this multi-stage stratified random sampling technique. What is multi-stage and what is stratification? Many of you know. Say we are thinking of West Bengal state or Hyderabad state or say Rajasthan state. So that state has a lot of households, a lot of enterprises. So what will be your first stage? Normally, we divide the area into two different stratums. That is your first stage, rural stratum and urban stratum. Rural stratum comprises of all the rural areas. What are the rural areas? There is the villages. The villages. And urban stratum covering all the municipalities, municipal towns, notified areas, outgrowths, census towns and all. So first stage, we can divide the entire state into two basic stratums, that is rural stratum and urban stratum. And after that, we can think of distinctly identifiable units within each stratum, right? What are the distinct identifiable units? In rural stratum, as you said, the distinct identifiable units are sample villages, the census villages. List of census village you can have from the primary census abstract. Last census, that is in 2011, you have the data of last census only. 2021 census data has not yet been released. And in many states, the census exercise was not conducted also. So you don't have the access to the data yet. So you have to work with the 2011 census data, which is available with us, while thinking of any work where the rural part of the work is concerned. So when we are dividing the state in two stratums, first we get a rural stratum, another we get an urban stratum. And in the rural stratum, we get all the list of villages. You know, the list of all villages of West Bengal or any other state that are available with the Directorate of Census Operations. That is our frame for rural stratum. In urban areas, on the other hand, there are different kinds of units, distinct identifiable units, like statutory towns, census towns, urban agglomeration, outgrowth, etc. So, let me introduce you with these units very quickly. Statutory towns are nothing but municipal towns. All towns which have a municipality or corporation or a cantonment board or a notified area, and which have local bodies, self governments. These are called statutory towns. It's very easy to understand. And it is all these notified towns, the statutory towns are notified by specific law. Since there is another concept of census towns, many of you know, census towns are all other urban area which are not statutory towns. First, census towns are not statutory towns. Census towns are such where there is the characteristics of urban areas. And some distinct characteristics are there. That there's a minimum population, 5,000 minimum population has to be there. 70% of the main working population in that area has to be in the non-agricultural activities. And there should be a density of 400 persons per square kilometer in that area. If these three criteria are satisfied, then we can consider an area as a census town. As in case of Birbhum, I can tell you Surul area is a census town. Ahmedpur is a census town. These areas satisfy these criteria of population criteria, non-agricultural activity criteria. There are so many other concepts like main working population. Many of you know maybe. Main working means people who are major time activity is in some economic activity, their main working population. So these are census towns. Next comes your urban agglomeration. Urban agglomeration like Bombay Central you can consider. At least an area which has at least a census town, at least a municipal town or municipal corporation, and along with that there are some outgrowths. That part taken together, we generally call it an urban agglomeration. And the criteria is As per 2001 census, 2011 census has not specified any criteria for urban agglomeration. As per 2001 census, the population has to be at least 20,000. So these are urban agglomeration, right? And the last towns, category of towns, are outgrowths. Outgrowths is nothing but a spread of an urban area. You can see the railway colonies, and we can see some areas affiliated to Vishwabharati University here in Birbhum, which are having certain characteristics of urban areas, where there are Paka roads, electricity, tap water system, drainage system, etc. There are post offices, educational institutions. So, if such kinds of areas are having characteristics of urban areas, then we consider these areas as outgrowth. Any doubt till this step? Any of you?
No, sir.
Sir, I have a query.
Okay, please.
Sir, when we are sampling, so
Hmm.
this outgrowth, sir, I have been to some of the rural areas, interior, and you have mentioned about the hamlet. So, for example, the population which is mentioned under a village. So, to consider this outgrowths or hamlets as a separate entity, or to be included within that
Right.
village.
That's a good question. In the later part of our discussion, we will cover that. Though I would
Okay,
like
sir.
to answer your question now only. That in case of outgrowths, only those outgrowths you will consider where you will get specified maps prepared by some government agencies. If you have maps, then you can consider it as a separate unit, separate identifiable unit. If not, then you consider it to be attached with that particular village to which it is attached. Okay. So your criteria will be availability of maps. Okay, that I will cover later as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay. So in rural part we are getting list of villages, and in the urban part we are getting that is municipal towns, municipal corporations, and your outgrowth, urban agglomeration, census towns. Next comes our maps for these distinct identifiable units. In the rural areas, you know that DLRS, that is Directorate of Land Records and Survey. In our state, we can say, and in every other state, there is a Directorate of Land Records and Survey, whose job primarily is to prepare cadastral maps for different villages. In our state, the Directorate of Land Records and Survey, which has its office at Alipur, they do a fantastic job. If you go through the cadastral map and if you master the art of reading the maps, reading the plots in the map, you will be amazed to see that even a single turn in a plot can be identified in the map as well. So this is a very fantastic job that is being done by the DLRS in case of preparation of maps of the different units. So for the rural areas, we have maps prepared by the Directorate of Land Records and Surveys. Okay. There is another map is Panchayat Samiti map, PS map. PS map is a map which covers all the different villages that are there in that particular Panchayat Samiti area or block area. So, and another important map is there. During the census exercise, the enumerators prepare a map, that is layout map. A particular village is subdivided into different portions, taking some population and other geographical area. They divide the entire village in some parts, and for each and every part, they prepare a layout map. And that layout maps are available with the Directorate of Census Operations, Government of India. We have in our state, we have the office at Janganana Bhavan at Salt Lake. But in urban areas also, there are layout maps. So far as primarily, if we think of maps, map is a very important part of the survey, because you have to identify the area in which you are undertaking your research. You were concentrated in a village or in an urban area, in a ward or something. So you need to know the boundaries, actual boundaries of the area you are covering. So map is a very important factor which is very often neglected by individual researchers. And I have come across different mistakes also. There are overlapped cases, overlapping of GPs and villages. There has been delimitation of different administrative units, but still that has not been taken care of. All these issues come up. Every individual researcher should use a very good quality map prepared by the Government of India or state governments during their survey exercise. Okay. So layout maps is one source which can be utilized by the researchers while conducting the survey. Right. In rural area, in the rural stratum, we have another advantage of cadastral map that is prepared by DLRS. Layout maps are also there. There is an additional backup. But in urban areas, we don't have any cadastral map. So we have only that enumeration block maps. The enumerators during the census exercises, they visit every town also, and they divide the town in different parts, and each part is an enumeration block, and they prepare the map. I will show you the design of the map and how they look like. Updation of cadastral maps, I am not going into the details. There was a CS map, there is cadastral survey maps, then it was revised and they were named revisional settlement maps, RS maps. Now we are using LR map, that is latest revisional map. So one thing I would like to share with you, that we are working with digitized maps these days. We have a very fantastic software, Bhuchitra, which covers the entire plots of the state, almost 95%, and that has been also integrated with the record of rights, that is Porcha. Many of you have come across the name Porcha. This Porcha is a document which gives you the right to stay on a plot of land. If you are when you are purchasing a plot of land, you are registering the property in the local registry office. That is not giving you any authority. That is only an agreement between the seller and the buyer. But once the property is mutated in land revenue office and you are getting a porcha against your plot, then only you are the bona fide resident of that. You are not owner. Owner is West Bengal government or any other state government. You are a tenant only. Rayat, we call riots, right? So most important thing is most of the maps have been digitized and it has been integrated with RORs. In your mobile phone now you can download an app, Bhumi, and you can check the details of your property from the mobile phone itself. That has been done by our state. So these are layout maps and average house list. This is a very, very good source of when we are talking of sample frame, preparation of sample frame. Average house list can act as a very good source of sample frame when you are undertaking a survey. So Directorate of Census Operations, they hold these maps, but practically I know almost everyone who are there in Directorate of Census Operations, all our friends are there. So what I have known from them, the maps are not being maintained properly, They have a very good storage facility, but many previous old maps they are not being able to preserve due to shortage of space and all. That is another administrative part. So layout maps, an average house list is actually a list, the list of households who are residing in that particular enumeration block. So one layout map pertains to one enumeration block. An average house list or HL is the list of household of that enumeration block. So you are getting the detailed list of households in which occupation they are in. Every detail you are getting in average house list. So you don't need to even go for a door-to-door survey for getting the sample frame. But it is procuring the HL and layout map is not that easy. That I will let you know. So what data you get in layout map? You get all these things: state, town, district, ward, etc. Boundaries. And every geographical area has to be earmarked with specific boundaries. Location, census house, each census house is located. What is its use? Whether it is being used as residential or non-residential. All these information you get in the layout map. This is the structure of a layout map. If you can have a layout map, you will see that this is this kind of a thing. So here different households are the one enumerator. This map is prepared by one enumerator who are undertaking the census exercise. This is a layout map of EB number 137 of English Bazar municipality of Malda district. Okay, so 137 number enumeration block. The map has been prepared by the enumerator who was assigned, and each and every distinct things, that is whether there is a water tap, there is a temple, there is a mosque, or there is any other thing, and apart from that, each and every residential house or non-residential structure is mapped in this particular. Can you believe that the entire nation? You should be amazed to see to learn that the entire country is mapped. So all households, almost all the households and their residential structure or non-residential structures are mapped somewhere, and that database is there with the Directorate of Census Operations of the respective states. Right. And this is another layout map of Krishnapur, of Kaliachok 3 block, Malda district. Here you can find these different steps. So one step identifies something, and what is the you can see it very clearly because it is a little hazy. But in this portion, the structures are noted, which means what? That are there. This portion gives you the primary identification particulars. This area gives you the notations. What means what? And this is your map. And this area, you can simply compare. This means, say, a temple. So if there is a triangle, you can see there is a temple at this place. So this way you can study very easily the map. And average house list of that particular enumeration block, you get all these information: the building number, census house number, for which purpose it is being used, population, number of residential houses, and the list. And this is the average house list. Okay, this is Birbhum Dubrajpur municipality, enumeration block number 7036. This way, you see this way the things are listed. Bas Griho means, it is written in Bengali. Bas Griho means residential house. These are the names of the household head. Here there's a remarks, when these maps are updated, when 2021 census will be done in West Bengal. I am talking will be because it has not been done during the time when the entire country was in that exercise. One thing is written here that poribarti onnotro chole gache, because the particular household has migrated to some other place. That is also noted in the remarks. So that household was there in the last census, but in the present census, that household has migrated. So all these minute details are recorded in the average house list. Okay. So now the most important question, that whether we can access them as regards availability. I told you that custodian is Directorate of Census Operations. They are the official custodian. Though, so far as Birbhum district is concerned, I have layout maps and average household of all the different villages and municipal towns. But I can't share it with you until unless I get permission from the Directorate of Census Operations, because it is there. It should be there in their custody. We are using it for pure official business. So it is difficult for individual people to access it because it is very costly. For an academic institution, it is fine, but for an individual research, it is very difficult to procure. But I suppose the cost of one city covering one enumeration block, I think it is available at 100 rupees. So if an individual researcher is trying to get a sample frame for, say, 2-3 villages, it will not be that costly. So you now you know the information. You have to apply to the Director Census Operations, and you have to seek for the average house list and layout map for your work. Okay. I have already told you this thing, that it is difficult to procure. Now comes urban frame survey. We are running little late because I have another part. Till now, any question from any of you?
Sir?
Or else I will proceed. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, just a few slides back, you have uttered one thing, that outgrowth. Sir,
Yeah.
I have one confusion with that. Whether this outgrowth things is just like some area which have some specific characteristics given by the or mentioned by the government.
Yeah, definitely. Like as you saw in case of census towns, there are specific criteria, 3 criteria. In case of outgrowth, there is no such specificities, but that particular area has to have the characteristics of an urban area, like pakka roads, drainage facilities, sanitation, post office, availability of post office, banks, and other institutions, schools, etc. So there's no specific like as in case of census town.
Is this, we can say it's a like a middle one of urban and rural? It's like that.
It is an extended part of an urban area, as I told you, that it's an mostly it is adjacent to an urban area, and depending on that particular institution, or say in case of railways, you see the railway colonies that are developed. So they are having urban characteristics. So with that railway, or with that Vishwabharati, or with that some other institution or some factory, one outgrowth gets developed with all these facilities. So these are
it's just like, can it be like some institutions have their own colony with some banks and other facilities are there? If this can be
area, you have to understand one thing, that an urban area is statutorily defined by some law, that in case of municipal town or municipal corporation, you have to have a law that specifies the boundaries of that area. But when you're talking of an outgrowth, that is basically a rural area. That is basically a rural area. Administratively, it is a rural area, but it has grown in the vicinity of an urban area, and they are having the urban characteristics. Okay. Now I got it. Yeah, these are different from rural areas. So you can't consider it. You can't consider it to be a rural area that way, because it has developed. It has got some development in it. So when you conduct a survey, then you have to keep certain things in mind, that these areas have got some development in these places.
Yes, sir.
So so far as policy making is concerned by the government, these areas cannot be treated as rural areas,
Yeah.
and it cannot be treated as an
As
urban area
area also.
either,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes,
So
sir. Yes, sir. No.
that is the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So next we get up urban framework. So as I told you that regarding maps in the urban area, we get census towns, UA, urban agglomerations or outgrowths, etc., statutory towns, and the only source of maps is our layout maps. Layout maps is prepared for rural area and also for the urban area. But in urban area, we don't have any cadastral map as we have in case of rural areas that is prepared by DRRS. So to fill up that gap, National Sample Survey, presently National Statistical Office, its field operations division is F4D. They have a very fantastic project, UFS, that is Urban Frame Survey. In every 5 years, there is a 5-year block in which they either prepare a map for a particular area, urban area, or they update it. Presently, it is phase 17, as far as my memory goes, it is phase 17, that is 2018 to 23 phases under progress. Generally, what is happening in an IFS, UFS, an urban area is first divided into some investigator units, IV units. Say for suppose we are talking of Siuri municipality area or Bulpur municipality or any other municipal town of any state. This particular area is first divided into certain investigator units. Investigators are people who are working in the field for preparing the maps. So investigator units, unit-wise, the area is divided first. And for each investigator unit, there is a map. They prepare a map for each investigator unit by following specific scientific norms. The norms, what are the different norms, how they design that map? We have to take another class on urban frame survey. That is not possible. You have to know that urban frame survey, by undertaking urban frame survey, National Sample Survey gives us the opportunity to have maps of urban areas, including that census towns and even outgrowths. One participant was asking me the question whether to consider outgrowth as a distinct unit or not. Here is your answer. If that area is covered by National Sample Survey in its urban frame survey exercise, and you get a proper map of that area, you can easily consider an outgrowth as a distinct identifiable unit, apart from the rural area to which it is attached, or apart from the urban municipal town to which it is attached. Right? Did you get me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So now in all kinds of official surveys, these UFS maps are used in all official statistics, in state surveys, in national sample surveys, in all surveys, excluding, I must say, the academic researchers. At some points of time, they don't care about maps, and they don't care about plans, how to conduct the survey, how to design a sample. They go on taking abruptly. At times they use word maps, but word maps are not accepted. If you write a paper on a primary survey based thing, and you send it to some other country in a university situated abroad, even in our country as well, they will not accept your paper because of the faulty sampling design or the faulty map you have used, because it has to follow the international conventions. While you are designing the map, you have to follow the scientific norms and international conventions. So most important is to use official UFS maps that are prepared by National Sample Survey Office. They are also not very costly. It is also 100 rupees per block. Let me go into a little detail. That UFS block and IV units, one municipal town is divided into certain IV units, And in each IV unit, there are certain blocks. The criteria is written here. That is, it is one UFS block. You see, there are some 80 to 200 households depending on the area, and all the blocks taking together, they prepare. They actually add up to that particular town. And one investigator unit is constituted by adding up 20 to 50 blocks that way. So you get municipal town. So you are not getting a comprehensive map of a municipal town. You are getting a you are getting the map of an IV unit. So if you want to have a map from NSO, you have to give requisition for a specific IV unit. Please arrange to provide me an UFS map for IV number 1 of Suri municipality or IV number 2 of Bolpur municipality. Like this. In that particular IV map, you will get the maps of different blocks. I will show you the structure of the map.
Sir,
Okay. Yeah.
is this the same as the census enumeration blocks that were done earlier for urban areas?
No. Census enumeration blocks are different. UFS blocks are different. You can use either of these two, but UFS maps prepared by National Sample Survey, as they are updated every 5 years,
Yes, that will be more accurate.
I will advise you to use the UFS maps while you are undertaking your research.
Okay, thank you.
So that way you are getting the UFS maps. Okay, this is the structure of a UFS map. It is a map of Suri municipality, IV2. So this IV2 has all these blocks in this particular. You see, the block 2, block 4, block 8, this way. So this map contains all the area covered in a particular part of the town, which is defined as IV2, that is Investigator Unit 2, and that contains about 20 to 50 blocks. And when you are undertaking a survey, you choose only 1, 2, or 3 blocks that way. It is sufficient for an individual researcher to pick up 2, 3 blocks for their research, because that covers around 240, 300 households, right? And this is a boundary particulars. We call it a B2 map. So this is a schedule where the different boundaries of the blocks are defined. You are getting these blocks. You are reaching. Suppose you are reaching a particular area of a particular municipal town. So how will you identify that block? Every block has its north, south, east, west boundaries. So that boundary particulars are given in this boundary particulars. By using this, you can identify your specific block, because you are selecting the block randomly, isn't it? You are selecting your block randomly. So suppose you are getting some block number 11 for your study. So you have to identify block number 11. Here you have got 11, block number 11. So how do you know which block is 11? So you have to consult this particulars, and then only you can identify your block and can list your households and prepare the sample frame. Right. Now, deciding the sample size and further stratification. So we got the whole population, a state that was divided into rural part and urban part, rural stratum and urban stratum. Rural stratum was divided into villages. Urban part was divided into different identifiable units. We got their maps. Now we have to think about our further stages. What will be the sample size? That will depend on your time. That will depend on your resource, how much amount you can spend, how much time you can devote to your study. That will primarily decide. But that doesn't mean that I have only 7 days time to complete the work. So let me take some 10 households and make a paper. That is not done. So there should be a minimum. So there's a specific rule also. I don't have any opportunity to discuss that in this class, but there's a specific norm that minimum sample size to take in while you are considering a particular survey. So depending on the subject, you have to go for the stratification. Like as we were discussing that if we want to discuss if we want to have impact study of COVID-19 pandemic on the economies of rural artisans and craftsmen, then what we can do if we want to study the impact of COVID-19, say in West Bengal or so, say in other states, what we can do, we can divide West Bengal or other state in two parts, rural and urban. We are getting a list of all villages there in the rural part. Let us, we can do another thing. In second stage, if we think that every district has to be covered, then we will consider each district to be a separate rural stratum. That is, so number of rural stratums will be as many districts are there in the state, and every district will have its representation. If we think though, no, I will not go for any specific, I don't have any bias, I would take randomly 5 districts. So you can choose 5 districts, and then out of that 5 districts from the list of sample villages, you can take any number of sample villages depending on your subject and depending on your resource and time availability. Okay, so then in case of urban areas as well, you have to do the same exercise. You have to procure, you have to select the UFS blocks, and you have to identify your fastest units. So these are the fastest units. You know, this is a very important term in sample survey. These fast stage sampling units. Which are the fastest sampling units? A sample village, or a sample UFS block, or a sample enumeration block in an urban area or in a rural area. So that is your fastest unit. So you first decide about the fastest units. How many fastest units you can cover, right? Next, what comes next? Then you have to decide how many ultimate stage units you can consider. Suppose you have to complete your exercise in 1 year. Okay, so you have to calculate that how many villages or how many urban blocks you can consider. Suppose you have considered 5 villages and 5 UFS blocks. Then you have to decide out of these 5 plus 5, 10 units, how many households you can consider for your exercise, right? You can think of 10 households in each sample village, 20 households in each of the sample village. How these 10 households will be selected, or 20 households or enterprises will be selected, as the case may be. That will decide on your objective. You have to stratify there. So you get 5 villages, you get 5 UFS blocks. You have got 5 village maps, and you have got 5 UFS maps. So you get into there, you list the households residing in all these 5 villages, and in each of these 5 villages you are making a sample frame. That sample frame gives you the list of all households residing in that village. Okay. Your task is to pick 20 households from that village. Do you want to select those 20 households randomly? If you do so, that will be wrong, because you need to have representation of all different groups. So you have to stratify these. Say in first village 1, there are 200 households. So you have got a list of 200 households. By using the map, you have been there. You have listed the households. You have got a sample frame of 200 households. And from there, you have to get 20 households for your final survey. So that 20 households will be selected. Before that selection, you have to go for stratification. That you stratify these households in, say, indebted, non-indebted. In case of enterprises, you consider it registered, unregistered. You categorize them as, say, OAEs and establishments. That way, when you are conducting preparing the sample frame only, you design your questionnaire in such a way that all these information are covered in that schedule. Who are indebted, who are non-indebted, which institution is registered, which is not, which is OAE, which is establishment, and all. Right? So you get a clear picture covering all the information you desire to have, and then from each different strata, from indebted you can pick 4, from non-indebted you can pick 4, from registered you can pick 4. That way, according to the objective you have defined, you have to select 20 households from the group of 200 households. and that selection will be random. That is from, say, there are 50 indebted households in that village, where there is a total of 200 households. Okay, so from that 50, you are getting four. So that selection of four households from 50 households, that will be random by circular systematic sampling kind of exercise. You can well consider. You can select that. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Did you get me
Yes,
properly?
yes, sir.
Okay. Actually, the class time is very short, in which it is not possible to define all aspects of a sample survey. I'm just trying to touch up. So next, I will not speak much on this official statistics in planning. There are a lot of literature. If I get time, some next time I will see you and discuss the planning thing, how this official statistics is used in planning and how the things are designed. I will give you, I think you are not feeling tired.
No, not at all,
No, sir.
sir.
No, sir.
Sir.
Okay, okay, fine. Then I will give you 2 minutes break. After that, I will go for that designing of questionnaire. Okay, just 2 to 5 minutes break. I have I have 2 3 files to take care of. I will just sign the files and I will get back to you. Okay. So
Okay,
you
sir.
don't go anywhere else. You stay there. I'm just taking 2 to 5 minutes break. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us start because we don't have much time. Mm, can you see my slide now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So now, in the second part, I will very quickly discuss the designing of question. Though it's a very interesting subject, uh, designing of questionnaires. I will just give you some thumb rules that have to be followed while designing a questionnaire. I'll just finish it in 30-35 minutes. Not more than that. So this is all about in academic research and also in official statistics how the questionnaires are designed. In official statistics there's a whole team. Uh, as you know, in case of NSO, there is National Statistical Office. There's a there's a specific wing. There is Survey Design and Research Division. The job of that department is to just design the schedule. The whole of the year they get engaged themselves in designing of schedules for different government surveys, like we discussed in case of domestic tourism, multiple indicator survey, employment unemployment survey, survey on consumer expenditure, and a lot of other issues. So one dedicated wing with at least 100 officers to 200, 500 officials and a lot of computers and infrastructure is a dedicated wing to take care of that designing of schedules. But in case of individual researchers, in individual academic institutions, it is not possible to have such a big team. So we have to do it by ourselves, by using our little skill and the computers. Okay, so we will just discuss the basics of basic rules to be followed in case of designing of questionnaires. Okay, what is a questionnaire? There's no point in reading it out. We know that questionnaire is a schedule that contains different information that you need to collect from your ultimate stage units, that is households or in enterprises. Okay, so that by preparing that schedule, you collect information relating to their demographic particulars, knowledge, different activities, depending on your objective. You just design that way. So it's quite obvious that information to be collected from a large number of people. What is a good questionnaire? A good questionnaire has to be so designed that the response rate is good. Okay, and valid and accurate responses to the questions friend are obtained. I mean, you have to consider one questionnaire has to be such that most of the people get interest in responding. At times we frame or design such big questionnaires or questionnaires with so many unnecessary information, people get bored in answering. So you have to design your schedule in a way that the most of the people respond, and they respond. They give their valid and accurate reply. Okay, so a good questionnaire have these two qualities. And what we have to do for maximizing our response rate? To maximize our response rate, we have to consider carefully how we administer the questionnaire. There are certain important steps. When you visit a household, you just go to a household and just from your bag you just take a schedule out and go on putting questions in a courtroom style. Well, so if your approach is that, many people will not much take will not take much interest in answering. Until and unless you define your objective. When you go to a household, you first establish some rapport with the household. That we are from here, we are from this academic institution, we are from this government organization, we are doing this. This is our purpose. This will help the society in this way. If you not say these things before starting your schedule, before starting your questions, that household, that person, the informant, will go on disturbing you with questions. What I will get from this? Why should I answer? If I don't answer, what will you do? So many different questions you have to face. So you have to decide how to administer your questionnaire, and you have to establish a rapport. You know, now in our country, Collection of Statistics Act has been implemented. So now in case of many surveys, we can implement this act, Collection of Statistics Act. So furnishing of information is mandatory for everyone. In case of individual researchers, it is not possible. So what they can do? They visit a household, they visit an urban area, say they go to an apartment, visit people's. People may respond, may not respond. You don't have any legal right to ask personal questions to people. So only way to get information is to establish a rapport with the people whom you are asking questions, right? And you convince them that your information, your replies will remain confidential, and you don't put so many questions. You put in only the relevant questions that are absolutely mandatory for covering your objective that way. And how do you ask a question? When to ask? Suppose you go to a household and see that there is a say there's a bereavement in the family. Okay, somebody has died in the family. Okay, now you go to the household and start asking questions. So people will run after you with a stick in their hands. Okay, so you have to decide that what is the appropriate time to put your questions that way. Okay, so and what will be the general layout of your question? What to ask? There are three potential types of information, you know. There, one, we know, all of you know, that we are interested in some questions which are acting as dependent variable. Some are independent variable. And some factors are there which are in between. It is related to both dependent and independent factors. But they have sizable impact on the dependent variable. Those are called confounding variables. Okay. Now we are planning a survey to find out the students' factors, predicting the level of certain knowledge, skills, and attitudes. At the end of this research methodology workshop, say suppose we were attending the research methodology workshop, and we are planning a survey to find out students' factors, predicting the level of certain knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Then what will be your dependent variable? Your dependent factors will be the students' level of relevant knowledge, that whether that knowledge is increasing, the skills, attitudes are increasing at the end of the survey, at the end of the course. Okay. And what are independent variables, independent factors? That will be students' learning styles, attitude, attentiveness. Many people, you know, while attending, particularly these days during COVID-19 pandemic, so many virtual seminars are there. Many people attend a class, just switch off the video, and they just sleep. So that is the extent of attentiveness of those participants. So these are independent factors like learning styles, attentiveness, and the extent of fruitful interactions that are being done in the class. And confounding variables, which are related to both dependent and independent, and which have huge impact in these dependent variable. How resourceful the teacher is, quality of teaching, style of teaching. I have seen many teachers who just like to read out from a note, and the participants get bored. See, if you are there to read out from a written text, You can mail it to the students. They can read it themselves. So what is the utility of taking a class? Isn't it? Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So so quality of teaching, the way a person teaches in a class is very important, and it has a huge impact on what you say, the level of knowledge or attitude or that way skill that gets developed in the course of a class. Okay. Now, what is the ideal format of a questionnaire? There are these are very fundamental and widely discussed things. Many of you might know that there's some close-ended questions, there's some open-ended questions. In what are close-ended questions? Close-ended questions are those which are pre-formatted. That is, your questions are your like, what is your marital status? It is pre-formatted. It is a close-ended question. So it has to be either single or married or divorced or widowed. Like this. But if we ask someone that which class do you think is the worst hit by the COVID-19 pandemic? Is it the agricultural cultivators? Is it the agricultural laborers? Is it the rural artisans? Is it the salaried people? The teachers? The private people? So there may be many options. You have an open option to answer this question. So these are open-ended questions, right? The last question that we asked, that is which class is worst? We could make it close-ended as well. So we are giving a pre-formatted list of answers, replies, like which class is worst hit? Retailers, cultivators, agricultural laborers, salaried people, others. Which are others? You please specify which are others. So it is little in between the close-ended and open-ended thing. So these are formats. And what are the advantages of an open-ended and closed-ended question? Open format is good in those cases where you don't have specific knowledge about what the answers can be. Like we asked about the COVID-19, or in case of demonetization, when there was demonetization, we were not sure about people's perception about the impact, how people react to this demonetization thing, how was they hit by this particular policy of the government. So it was better to have open-ended questions in case of such kinds of studies. But close-ended is good for most of the cases, because if the answers are given, if the replies are pre-formatted, then it will be easy to get the reply, and it will be quick to enter your data. And discrimination between less literate and less articulate people with those who are well qualified will be minimized, because when you ask the question regarding COVID-19 pandemic impact, if you ask this question to an illiterate person, he will answer in his own way. And if you ask this question to a university professor, he will reply in a different way. There will be huge discrimination in the answers. That will not be there in close-ended one. And the close-ended questionnaires, the replies can be easily coded, recorded, and the results can be quickly analyzed and quantitatively described. These are the advantages of wording. Is very, very, very important. That how do you frame your words in the question? What are the general rules? Use short and simple sentences. Because if you use short sentence, that doesn't confuse people. That doesn't that doesn't confuse people that way. They are not complex. If you find a question, suppose you are wanting to put a question where there are 2-3 aspects. So you divide the aspects and ask your question. Okay. And you ask your question one at a time. There is one piece of information at one time. Don't dilapidate. If you ask a person regarding his bank balance and at the same time regarding his loan, then he will be confused that which question to answer first. Okay, so it is better to ask one question at one time, and if you have different, if you need answers to different questions, then you divide the questions in different phases. For example, I have given here an example. Please rate the lecture in terms of its content and presentation. Suppose I am giving a presentation for you for the last 1 hour 20 minutes. So how do you rate this lecture in terms of its content and presentation? So if you want to know answers to these two questions, you frame your question like this. Please rate the lecture in terms of 1, its content, 2, its presentation. Okay. It may so happen that my PPT is good. I have designed a good PPT, but I am not being able to present it properly. So score in presentation will be less, score in content will be high. If I am good at both these, then I will get a good score in both these. So you have to apply your sense how to divide the questions. Avoid negatives. This is a general rule. Suppose you want to ask that you want to know that with a small group teaching, these days White Hat Junior and beyond school kind of institutions have developed. They are trying to develop small group teaching amongst kids and even for grown-up students as well. So if you want to ask a question, the small group teaching should be abolished, then small group teaching should not be abolished. Instead of phrasing this sentence, you should put it as small group teaching should continue. Double negatives you shouldn't apply, right? Questions has to be precise. If you want to ask students to rate their interest in medicine, suppose you want to ask a class regarding their interest in medicine. So they will get confused that whether it is within the group of medical degrees, that is general medicine, obstetrics and surgery and other clinical specialties, or it is medicine to general course. So you will the people will get confused, isn't it? So you have to be precise. Time frame is another important thing. If you don't add a time frame, you can't get a proper answer. If you say, how often did you borrow books from your library? Then what will be the answer? Sir, in last week or in last month. The student will get confused. So you have to add a time frame. That in the last week, how many books did you borrow from the library? Or within the past 6 months? Okay, this way. If we ask a cultivator, how often do you take crop loan for seasonal agricultural operations? Seasonal agricultural operations, they take crop loan. If we put this question, then in many cases they will not be able to answer. You have to ask him properly that in the last 2 crop years, or in the last 1 agricultural year, how many seasons did you take seasonal agricultural loan? Second thing, the next thing, you have to judge your respondents properly.
Sorry, sir. 5 minutes more.
Okay, sure. I have only 10-15 slides left, which I hope would be completed in next 10 minutes, if not 5, it is 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So, in a survey of university lectures on recent changes in Indian statistical system, if you put a question that do you agree with the recommendations of the National Statistical Commission, then it will be many educated people are not aware of what National Statistical Commission is and what are its recommendations even, right? So you have to see that whom you are putting your questions, whether that group does have the proper knowledge to answer that question or not. Similarly, if you ask, do you think digitization program of the government in different departments like agriculture and industry is likely to boost aggregate demand in the economy? It is not possible for the people who have not studied economics to answer this question. So target group, you have to decide that whom you are putting your questions. Level of details, whether you put confidential question, you have to see that you have to avoid those questions which people are less inclined to answer. Okay. Sensitive issues, if you want to have answers, this is a very tricky thing, we conducted a survey on liquor consumption, the habit of liquor consumption among people. Actually, people think it to be a bad thing to have. Drinking is a bad habit. It is not good for health. So people normally hesitate to answer. Here I have given you an example. You see, if you in a class, if you ask a question, have you ever copied other students' answers in a degree exam? So it is very natural that all will say, no, sir, I have not copied, because everybody knows that copying other people's answer scripts is not good. So in such cases, in sensitive issues, you have to adopt a casual approach. Like, by the way, do you happen to have copied other students sometime? Answers in degree exam. Be very casual. Or numbered card approach. Please tick one or more of the following items which correspond to how you have answered degree examination questions. And in the list of answers you put, copied other people's copies, answer scripts. This way. Or you can say everybody approach. These days everybody drinks a little. It's kind of a social drinking. Or, most medical students have copied other students' answers in degree exams. Do you happen to be one of them? Like this way. So he will start thinking, okay, it's a universal thing. Everybody does it. So there's no harm if I acknowledge, if I agree. Okay. Or other people approach. What is that? Rahul copies answers in a degree exam from Vijay. They were then asked, do you feel Rahul is wrong? What penalty should you impose? Should be imposed for Rahul? Or have you done, or would you consider doing the above? If you put the questions this way indirectly, then you can get good answers to the confidential questions. You have to minimize the bias. The same thing, if you ask your students in a class that within the past month, how many morning lectures have you missed due to the late night parties? Then the students will hesitate in answering that question. They will say, no, sir, never. We have not skipped any class. But the question should be, if you rephrase the question as, within the past month, how many times did the late night parties with friends class or coincide with next day morning lectures? And how many times did you give priority to socialization, So if you put before him attending parties to be part of socialization, then he may take interest in answering correctly. Yes, there were 3 parties where I had to attend, and I had to miss my morning lectures that way. So this is the way you have to minimize the bias. So the same kind of thing, length of questionnaire. There is no universal thumb rule that this has to be the optimum length. It has to be decided by you only while undertaking the research. What is your topic? What is your objective? which subject you were covering, under which geographical coverage. All these determine how many questions will be there in a questionnaire. Okay. And thumb rule is also that you go from easy to difficult, from general to particular, from factual to abstract. Start from the closed format questions, so that if you at the very outset you start asking open-ended questions, people will start thinking, okay, let me think over this. So you will don't have you won't have proper answers to the questions. Okay. And it is better to have variety of question format. Okay. That will help you. I mean, personalized covering later, if you add, that will be good. How to administer questionnaires? It can be interview method. It can be self-administered questionnaires. If you go and ask people regarding something, it is self-administered. And if you email your friends or some contacts and request them to answer your questions, that is your interview administered questionnaires. That is your electronically designed questionnaire. In developed countries, generally such things. Nowadays, PMO, you know that they are administering different questionnaire and putting that in Twitter or in these social platforms and asking answers for that. Advantages: self-administered questionnaires are in official statistics. We always prefer self-administered questionnaires to interview administered questionnaires or email questionnaires kind of things, because self-administered questionnaires, you see, it is easy to administer. You can see the person whom you are asking the question. When you are putting the question, you can see his facial expressions, whether he is confused or not. You can explain. You have the advantage of explaining. And even illiterate people you can consider. By explaining your own language, you can reach out to those people for getting your answers. In case of that way interview administered questionnaires, that facility is not there. Okay. Exactly what will be the exact method, that has to be decided by you only. Okay. And many of you know that piloting is necessary before finalizing a survey schedule, sample schedule. You have to pilot it. Piloting means you have to test the schedule by going to some small group of people and to test that whether the wordings that are there are appropriate or not. Whether you are getting proper answers to particular questions. Once that piloting is completed and it is done successfully, after changing some wordings and some, in cases you are rephrasing the questions, you can finalize the question. All these steps. Type of closed format I have already discussed. This way. Different kinds of scales are there, choice of categories. Likert style, statistics is an interesting subject. You can agree, strongly disagree to strongly agree. Differential scales, how do you rate this presentation? Extremely interesting is 1, extremely dull is 10. You can give a score. It also may be diagrammatic. On the x-axis, you can say give extremely dull. In the vertical axis, you can extremely interesting, and you put a diagram. So that way, that can be diagrammatic as well. That can be checklist, that you circle the clinical specialties you are interested in. Then you are putting the options: general medicine, obstetrics, surgery, orthopedics. This way, you are circling the particular. And closed first choice format, in case you can rank most interesting, least interesting. Okay. So in a nutshell, what you do, you have already got into that schedule has to be carefully designed so that valid information comes in. Meticulous attention must be paid to ensure that individual questions are relevant, appropriate, intelligible, okay, precise and unbiased. And how you questions are put. First, you avoid putting sensitive questions. Don't go for the demographic questions at the very outset. So you have to design your own way to prepare the questionnaire. Okay. So here I will stop sharing my screen, and I will quickly go to you. I will request you to switch on your videos and let me know whether you have any question in next 2-3 minutes.